race war of the 21st century, we have xenophobia and racialized white nationalist hate is the extended order of modernity that re-embodies the inheritances of 1619 manifest destiny. IPR policy is forged in an eternal debate over the expansion of white humanity and all its hypocrisy. The global promise of white being determines the coordinates of an always unfolding violence that is already steeped in an edifice of accessibility. Narratives of racial progress ignore the pre-established template that is inextricably tied to white humanity. This establishment of statecraft is the theater of racial nation building with vacillating movements and subtitles, post-civil rights, multiculturalism, resurgent white nationalism, post-racial liberalism, law and order, the war on drugs, war on terror, and the infrastructures of tolerance and repression that are never finally separable. Rodriguez 19. Contrary to liberal narratives of white national forms everywhere against all evidence of racial progress, justice, subjection, or promises of postponed futurity for those who fit the civil enemy profile of racial domestic war, post-civil rights, multiculturalism, white nationalism, infrastructure, repression are never separable. Internal debate over the violence of white humanity offers humanitarian favors against the urge to violently decline when people loot. The inevitability of suffering explodes white universal, the most alienating feeling. The limits of eternal debate are whether a potential expansion of its collectivism capable of altering the intensity of casualties, militancies, misread by organized compromises of the non-profit industrial complex. The problem is not desire for protective capacity and duress, rather than eternal debate can only allow concession, which subsists on policing and equitability. Winning protective capacity is only for now. Adjudication debate occurs in symbiosis with the enforcement of culture, judicial, military statutes that firm the anti-civilizational profile of the black and aboriginal grasp for the brutalizer's decency. The protest claims to remind them we are not criminals. The delusion is willful. Civil war is always global. Those who have been enslaved find power in the fight. They are upset that you cannot appreciate how far you've come. Supremacy is violently enforced from genocidal, low-intensity cultural symbolic, the end of official apartheid or maneuvers of anti-racist reform. White being assembles common sense. There is an invitation to fantasize people calling future rebellions of the class rebel insurgency among people who refuse to be willing participants in an oppressive system. These do not rely on massive numbers. They pivot on willingness of committed collectives to strategize such work as the capacity to spark revolution. The resolution is an imposition of surveillance capitalism based on the logic of data accumulation and the imposition of economic logic. And the 1EC traces the history of logistics as a project simulation that renders the globe as a zone for death and the forcing of endless accumulation towards the perfection of economically rational subjects. Moten and Harney 21. The moment you say it is mine because I worked on it and proved it, you start a war that codified the anti-social contract that crusades believe brutality was a part of humanity. Anti-social contract forces sovereigns against contractors and contractors against each other. In having been accumulated, financialized, emerging against the history of revolt, socialist exchange, anthropological underground, economic practice, judicial regulation of exchange ownership derives from improvements of properties itself put to work include race, gender, class, trust, social contract defines brutal crystallization of subject and object, endless improvement enforced as an absolute contingency is inscribed upon the flesh, dedicated to killing, carrying out the racialization of difference, barbaric festival improvement as militarily enforced, produce the globe as deadly and deadly bodies politic, monsters as recognized, drone-like simulations regulate the social with police, improvement is war, to apply the public sphere is war, anti-social contract is haunted by the economic contract. From cases like Supreme Records v. Decca Records to Stowe v. Thomas, the resolution's call for intellectual property protection cannot be disarticulated from these racialized epistemics that preconfigure whiteness as superior and civilized. VATS 20. IP narratives are oversimplified in conversations with ways to center whiteness, but copyright, patent, and trademark continues to be race constructed by racial capitalism through speeches regimes are imagined through racialized notions, racialized episteme, a priori constraints, people of color, racial scripts are flexible, scripts can be baked in seeming colorblind ideals, operates as space of racial formation, reproduced colors, lacking capacity to create racial rhetorics, marks on bodies is incapable. Thus, in the face of the violence of the resolution, we affirm militant preservation, the unsettling feeling of the opposite flow, ones that begins at the moment of sociopoiesis that harnesses the energy, sociality, against the pervasive fixation of policy, and it refuses their violent corrective and violent touch of white being in favor of a new feeling, a haptic relationality where we open ourselves to the possibilities of possibilities, one where we gather dispossessed feelings in common as we undercommon the capacity to feel through others, for others to feel through you, for you to feel them feeling you. Melomed 16. A performative event impeded with each reading can be a rupture of institutionality to undo their logics, individualizing, rationalizing, and their will to fix, but involved with the reduction and command of the social individual. Sociality itself is resistance. Policies named for political control and command, so controls social reproduction by diagnosing incorrectness for those in need of improvement. Counterpose planning and policy begins with military preservation. In the face of policy, there's nothing wrong with us. Logistics containerize bodies, objects, affects, information for circulation is capital. To logistics, McCartney and Moten counterpose hapticality or love, the capacity to feel through others, for others to feel through you, for you to feel them feeling you. The undercommons repeatedly performs the defeat of neoliberal proceduralism by the socio-political imagination. It's a term for the non-place of abolition beneath and beyond the university, inhabited by maroons, castaways, and fugitives of an apositionality of being together that renews our sense of institutions and sites with form. An appearance of social being and collectivity is determined through social action and contest for a broader sense of collective social being, rather than neoliberal forms of institutional power. Lets us imagine and practice institutionality can be made anti-intuitively that empower us to try to habit social being otherwise, reminding us that radical change requires structure. Movements are not just abstractions or overlapping circuit points in the global sphere, but ongoing resistances that happen in our thoughts, actions, provocations, and explorations. Only our model of debate seeks to extend towards new levels of understanding and imminent processes of resistance that unleash beautiful insurgencies from the ground up. Shakaitis and Graeber 7. Investigation and social research span possibilities for political action. The work of militant investigation is multiple, extending its activism to new levels of understanding. Flesh-made words from imminent processes of resistance. Militant investigation discovers new possibilities within the present, turning dead ends into joyful insurgency. Help compile a book of essays and zaptisos. When we write or when we read, the beginning is not the word, but the screen faced with the mutilation of human lives. And the theoretical reflections, opposition, negativity, fear, struggle for rage. Thought is born of liberatory struggles, ultimately the struggle against identity. True revolutionary knowledge would have to be pragmatic form of knowledge that lays bare all pretensions deeply embedded in the logic of transformational practice, spheres, debates ensued in Latin America, arguments turned around very particular questions of revolutionary strategy, who has better models of Zapatistas or Chavez's Bolivarian revolution. Debate is a microcosm of the race war. Kelsey, 19. We are haunted by civil war. Liberal commentators express anxiety about unraveling our national fabric, polarization, identity politics, choice, persuasion, disenchantment with institutions, the crisis that drives desire for normalcy, invites us to rethink debate, to pose a different question that does not redeem a past that never was, rather than make debate great again. I sit with the vertigo. Such will require we rethink the parameters of debate as dialectical, agonistic contestation of the possible. My central interlocutor will be blackness. The Greeks refer to civil war as stasis, so the stabilities are also meaning. Stasis doubles constant permanence of war. Even in peace, stasis means there is ground in the form of prior consensus on disagreement. Stasis speaks to a disavowal of ungroundedness. Must one have presupposed common ground in preceding argument. Refusing this disavowal enables us to think of ground as a race war against its own void via anti-blackness. To say the debate is impossible is to beckon with war on the horizon. Blackness threatens stasis with incoherence and leave raciality by their wayside. Is to disavow race war. Polite discussions that acknowledge racial terror, maintain blood innocence, the pathologist's black utterance of rage, and by adjusting the impossible demands of blackness to the acceptable terms of debate. Blackness can only appear as an afterthought. Race war now, Davis 24. Insights into demographic anxiety demonstrate how murderous violent acts inspired by white genocide are of a piece with race war. Race war having been since the mid-18th century. Violent acts committed by the extreme right aspire to spark a literal race war. Wrest sovereignty from the state. Conspiracy theories provide impetus for such violence. Hardest to sense of existential urgency. Millennials strive pre-ages apocalypse. One must act now. Unlike state racism, biopolitics is enacted at a grassroots insurrectional level in the hope of sparking societal change and violence. Murderous acts, methods to stalk the populace and understanding the real conditions of their existence potentially inspire them to take up arms as participants in a coming race war. Ethnic pluralist ideology provides further impetus for violence. Urgent violence for the extreme right includes the murder of children, such as those purposes targeting the Norwegian and Christchurch mass murders. Violence also serves as a warning to the other forms of brutality based on ethno-pluralism attainable after societal collapse and race war. Fiat is uniquely bad for activist skills. Traber 18. Fiat is uniquely bad for training activists. If you're not advocating the state, fiat is impossible. The solvency of collective action cannot be separated from the things that are done in collective action. This is true for all non-state action. There's no fair version of the critique that is all meaningfully similar to the critique. Many debaters assume that the only pragmatic politics is for the state. This is not the case. The feminist movement's intervention on norms are examples of the percentage of debaters will have the chance to be in terms of the state's minuscule. While all debaters engaged in non-state movement politics combat against blackness cannot be policy. None of the major social movements were driven by policy action. Fiat and radical politics hides the radical politics. Claims about the necessity of state action are signs of point. The work that debaters want to exclude instead of insisting on fiat is exactly the type of thing radical politics does. Fiat trains debaters to think like legislators, not organizers, but the only way to have substantial change for the status quo is to organize radical politics, teach strong education, different perspectives, give guidance. The insistence on fiat in round functions to erase minority perspectives empirically. Policy is used as a weapon to preclude discussion. Framework excludes epistemic contributions from people outside the mainstream. The erasure of critique from the outside means we cannot trust the plan commitment to concept and policy is more pragmatic than fiat. The things we learn when we fiat are useless. The state is unfair, demonstrates failure of creativity and concerning insistence to a narrow window of political tactics.
Are you good?
Yep.
How does the affirmative depart from the status quo?
We think that militancy is a valuable strategy. We think that if we win, that creating modes of hapticality and endurance within the race war is valuable. That should be a sufficient win condition.
Okay, how does the act create endurance within the race war?
Yeah, we think that rather than the individuation of the status quo, so our argument is that the race war attempts to fracture sociality and sort of individuate us from that, connective touch. We think that we should return to those forms of care work that exist through the underground.
Okay, what is causing, can you explain why debate, what practices in debate you've identified as being part of the race war?
Yeah, so there's a few. The Traber evidence says that the insistence on fiat and engaging from the top down crushes organization through the bottom up. The Kelsey evidence says that that's a tool of white erasure of black and brown modes of cultural practices.
Okay, so obviously in a traditional model debate, we have movements, counterplans against topical apps. Why does that not solve?
Well, we think that the imposition of reading a topical app for black and brown people when they are affirmative is still violent.
Maybe, but you would agree that the state, when we're saying a topical app, right, we're saying that the state has flawed institutions now. They're failing in whatever they're doing, right? So, okay, why is the centrality of the state, why is that now?
Well, our argument is that it is politically invaluable for black and brown students to spend the last 4 years of their childhood iterating over the state's potentiality when we all know that it is killed in the status quo and it cannot get better.
Okay, why is the app also not talking about the state's failures now?
Well, we talk about the state, but we endorse advocacy outside the state. Our argument is that fiat is not allowed for that, and instead force black and brown debaters to waste their social energy iterating useless politics.
Okay, so militant preservation, what does that look like outside of the state?
Yeah, so the Melamed evidence says that it's, number one, a performative event repeated with each reading that ruptures the sense of institutionality that creates the race war. Second, it says that creating modes of hapticality and care, like the BPP's breakfast programs, etc., we think that those things are valuable because they enable sort of endurance mechanisms for Black and brown people to create sociality and moments of release from the violence of the race war.
The Malamed evidence, you said that you refuse the violent touch of white being. What is white being?
Well, we described white being and like the white side of the race war as a set of protocols and norms, not just
okay.
people.
So if a black debater reads a plan, are they part of the white part of the race war?
We think that it is possible for black people to be racist, yes.
No. Are they part of the white part of the race war?
We think that if a black debater reads a plan, they have the option to do that, but we think that...
No, like yes or no. Are not an option. Like do they position themselves on the side, the white side of the race war?
I would say yes.
Yes, okay. You said your model of debate extends to new levels of understanding. What is your model exactly?
Yeah, we think that competing revolutionary strategies through militancy is valuable. We think that there are different ways that militant organizers can work and organize.
Why is that better for skills?
Well, we think that starting from the bottom up is valuable because it's more pragmatic, it does not durably fiat through things, etc. Make other arguments.
What is the assent? It's 5 off in our case.
Can you reply all with Samir in the chain?
Oh, yeah.
My bad.
You put that word in.
You all good?
Not yet. You just send it over to school.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. First up is topicality, the negative need not rejoin a further section, not offend federal government strengthening protection of IPR. 1. Resolve proceeding the colon. Any case of legislative form. Also, with anyone, a colon separate of the word result from the resolution result of the screening favor legal legislation. 2. The USFG notes the 3 branches, U.S. Legal 16, USFG is pre-branch legislature, executive, and judiciary powers on the side of the bed. No, the states, and 3. The shared recommends course of action favorite. And then trigger 2K. Common meaning of shared recommends action. 4. Social protection must make the IP is required, but discover or provide remedies for infringement. Mindell. 18. I construct the database of every court opinion or such a considered penal copyright shows the primary goal is whether action should the weaker IP protection should the versus be represent protection offered. The 40 to return IP to require IP rights around the scope of IP protection. The easier to prepare the remedies for infringement all of the protection. That means their act lies beyond the scope of a predictable, limited, and refutable topic. Fairness are ways. 1. It's intrinsic good, both sides depend on it as the basis. Their understanding whether impacts like suffering and racism have any basis in morality. It's paradoxical. Disregarding the for dropped arguments 2 line by line and to be upset if the judge rendered an incorrect decision. 2. Salter offenses strongly predicts academic engagement and consistent application and decision making processes checks against exhaustion, defeated moral agency and cynicism. Turns the rhetoricality. 20. Procedural fairness was strong predictor of academic engagement will observe now. Procedural fairness increases, but which includes low self-efficacy, exhaustion, and citizen lack of meaning. Procedural fairness can be stressed in science studies where mainly in Western countries, Polish relatively recent political transformations, students value fairness made out results highlight the importance of fairness from procedural adjustment to decision-making processes. 3. Only our offensive debate cannot shape our subjectivities. Argumentation causes equity restoring their offensive debates. And then 20. Will maintain that argumentative situations and prevent beliefs. Arguments are not efficient to change minds in real life. People live in online to change about when trust beliefs that when they are confronted with arguments they contradict, they look away or discover the argument triggers forms of reasoning whereby one rejects these arguments by engaging in argumentation often in amazing kind. Identity rather than accomplish or choosing people gravitate towards sources that confirm their opinions. Dissenting sources not sufficient to are obsessed with questionable polarization off the right instead of bringing parties together, argumentation throwing them apart. Illusions fails to come about the million is idealized not simple recommendations. 4. Agents. Next off is psychoanalysis. Race and racism are products of fantasy and unconscious construction of the racial other as superior to enjoyment. This structure of fantasy where the obstacle is actually the reason we enjoy fantasy drives all politics. the 25th, super spread the range desire rather than the question there's one innovative that provides a structure for how races produce and enjoyment through their object years as well. The subject desires to obtain the objects on important abilities what kickstarts desire, what characteristics of races fantasy is what is that the obstacle is a racial unobject to gift of object value otherwise wouldn't have been provided unrestrained. Enjoyment. The one he sees politics of urgency assumes whiteness is the obstacle and potential future enjoyment. While seeming radical, this mythologizes whiteness because fantasy requires the obstacle as a source for enjoyment, which causes the harm that outweighs taste. Now, 15 politics relates to politics structure anti-decorum, it's meant to bring down normality. Bodies within allegories whirling all about to embracing each other, pushing our courage, and they are coming the right. This is why we investing in turning whiteness into such each oceanic objects of constitutional whiteness, typical of narcissistic investment privilege, rights, and neoliberal age, properly engineered state media. The demonologist simply filthy model studies to whiteness, law, and claiming that such which all we will inflict. Features on which whiteness would scarcely have incapable whiteness, see the counter of imagination turning to nature whiteness. Call these realms of desire and imagination to inflate whiteness will require a different regime is desire, social does not have any feature history to monetize. Whiteness is a dry and symbolic resource without turn. Which we can no longer enable and righteousness we need to let go. Also, investments in whiteness if we confront privilege and hatred becomes all exhausting self-destructive critique. Discourses has replaced structural and also feelings suffice an interpretation not be trumped by discourses. Essentially the others are urgent. There will be no critique of our whiteness that does not start from the assumption that whiteness become that part of ourselves and appear deeply attached to. What next orient fantasy towards enjoyment of non-belonging. When he sees attempt at belonging, no matter how radical, can never subvert the racist fantasy because the appeal is not the completion of their goals, but rather the obstacles in their way. And non-belonging enables us to operate in a different ontological position that solves McGowan. Unit 22 only through emancipation from racist findings that want to dream to national equality. This cannot be achieved through additional inclusion efforts have always generated on opposition. No inclusion can erase a friend in any ever fantasy seeks out. Non-belonging can find enjoyment. We can turn from not belonging there, producing race and breaking the fantasized figure of the other requires distinction between enjoyment that derives from non-belonging and the image of fantasy and attributes to allowing the limit on enjoyment deals a lethal blow to racist fantasy permits the subject to enjoy. Not only abandon seeking any limited enjoyment, this is available to everyone only in racist fantasy. Others have monopoly on non-belonging instead of satisfaction, but as overcoming all obstacles, turning the taking object one else gets you. The obstacle is central to satisfaction. Racist fantasy loses appeal. The undercommon scale, the acts investment in ethics, racialized identity leads to color checking, a new standard of recognizable ethnicity according to the race word that turns the whole aspect. So, 14 viewer first of course, minus with the whereby there are certain ways that ethnic minorities must act in order to present themselves recognizable ethnic, Latino enough, black enough, Asian enough, American insofar as one has to look to the mirror of ethnic identity, adapt to that image of reproducing ego identity, often upward fate to one's experience, no pressure to conform to that notion of identity found in this place in the coordinates of a race, to be allowed to place on the color lines, to give one example Puerto Rican-ness is normal, will have excluded, based on expectation limited political power by carving out minority of a minority area, supposed to in conversation about sameness to different black shifting or closure, king, Ellen arrows, wanting to be black and prevent us from expecting new forms of resistance and expectations, psychosocial rules, specifically their analytical of a race war is bad and fixes identity surrounds rubrics of antagonism is human. And Levine's 20 and 6, a race war problem in discussion of nationalism, uses will come to discussion of another has to be waged. Not to raise that holds is to find it entirely in the norm. I guess those should be from the norm and enemy for with which societies are war and which from which society must become no way unites is the figure of the enemy Foucault. Shortly transformations from anti-state discourse into nationalism, we are seeing people identifying themselves according to their community, find by those who are different, those whose versus race process. So while an anti-constant increases between social has become incorporated mechanism of the state and is directed towards the state. Society's enemies. Every time they say, but the race war is happening, and that is the link in the jump term with Bowen. Bowen 14 asks the professional standpoint system without seeing what it would be to think outside the design for a standpoint black lives. Within the real ground of conception, what I offer radical solutions, political order, consideration, radical solutions between sociality and the state. There's some speaking off honors to come combatant to refuse its own acts of reform, rejection, and constitution of civil society's enemy, hostility, and civil butchery, unspoken violence, and political friendship, constitute capacity for alignment and coalition, market coalition. The alternative is to unlist true or comments requires to absolute vulnerability and unconditionality, as opposed to the last outline trying to embrace the antagonism. That this is what the one these authors actually advocate for. In 1917, I can of course the university person to say that on purpose no questionality around traditional award, so accept from refuge and it may let manipulation and destruction of a question circle of listen and their comments to be critical to the university may one personal part excellence more negligent than any other institution from self-expression to proceeds through the most active things of prioritize its rule and different uncommon might be contrasted but understood as very critique where we have it returning to the external world market at world clog VA pure litigation slow expensive and hostile league the special reformation method of resolving disputes and litigation traditional way versus concerned that civil lawsuits of the lawsuits especially too slow avoid with increasing frequency of both IP disputes docket overload and insufficient resolution of common litigation colony you can even roll over courts in healthy environment rights and nature strategic relations sexual common litigation litigation for courts enforcement and environment law courts services regarding in environmental context common litigation responses to appeals common litigation control verbally important streaming with real law and common change forming cause distinction name 19 common cause institutional non-linear cascading feedback and complicated thresholds and typical points ask cause table of right counting increases forming and carbon release of methane produce runaway running adaptability limit make extinction likely valid pick the 1 value state stands on the source responding with judgment. And then the ballot is to hollow validation that second time political energy and trust and then depressive case of the academy. Vote negative to decline affirmation. Phillips 79 concerns of the around the world of corrective forcing activities to object to investigation, correctly activation of change judges working on the instrumental and suggestion that out of all communities need the academic critique and the critical contradicts to children to unable to offer an adequate or to take speaking out of research study and the costume shooting. Need less sports opportunity analysis within the academy without trusting whether the critics should be examined in the first place at whatever you believe members are prepared to give our theory of surveillance. Mark at surveillance. Go to case. Low negative presumption race war now can't be weighed against off these positions. The race war is not performative. Ballisto abolish white militants and an individual debate rounds can't create community endurance. The theater of choosing sides in a context is a double turn. No race war beauty. In this 16, some point of resource from the beyond the narrative for warfare goes back. Essentially, there's a way forward. People look at the comments different. People have a camera and possible to neither. No quick answers compared to 1960. There's no need to be hopeful. Those 60s not only African Americans, this is why Asians, and then Latinos and race joins different groups. Temperatures all over the country rejecting race within choosing not on path. That's the only way you can win the civil rights movement. I was to say you have to pick a side. Race war is a trick of rhetoric that's racist and rhetorically disempowering story. You don't have students to do race when he didn't understand the phrase racism. Race war is a trick of rhetoric to master dynamics of racism who was on the receiving end, the giving and political spin implied equal forces. Market forces.
Good?
Yeah.
The psychoanalysis K, the linked evidence, what has the 1EC done that is problematic?
The 1EC has outlined whiteness as the central figure that blocks liberation for black and brown people. Essentially, every time you talk about white being as defining practices in the debate community and centering whiteness as the object to your satisfaction, we think that reifies whiteness. And
okay, so critiquing whiteness reifies it?
Not only that, but your investment in trying to solve that via militant preservation, we think that is also problematic.
Okay, so trying to solve racism reifies racism.
Sort of. The repetition compulsion of identifying one barrier to racism, or even multiple,
Then
that the
how
outcome
do
might
we
get away
solve
magically.
racism?
We can't solve all racism, obviously.
Okay, so we should just give up?
No. The alternative
What's
is
the
to embrace
alternative
non-belonging, which would, sort of move our focus away from whiteness and to our own socialities and respond
What's
to
the
that.
proper analytic frame to describe anti-black violence, xenophobia, etc.?
There is no one unified
Okay.
frame
Okay,
to describe all
I think we
violence.
agree with that, but sure. So go back to explaining what you were about non-belonging.
Yeah, so the non-belonging argument is that instead of centering whiteness as the locus point for all harm in the 1EC, in the world, in the debate community, we should instead focus on our own socialities and reject this drive to solve
Wait,
all
what do you mean
things.
focus on our own
The point is
socialities? What the hell
the
does that
repetition compulsion means that every time we try to solve things, the worse that problem becomes. So the more we try to prevent racist debate practices or call out
why is
framework
that
in the
true?
debate community. Why is that true? Because psychoanalysis is true. The
So-
repetition compulsion means that the death drive compels
Okay.
us all toward our own
Okay,
undoing.
sure. So non-belonging looks like looking at our focusing
No,
on our
it
socialities. How does the
it
alternative?
rejects the 1EC's focus to try to solve whiteness.
Okay, so it just refuses trying to solve racism.
Yeah.
Okay,
With,
sure.
with one option.
The undercomments K, should black organizers be unconditionally open to let white supremacists in?
Yes, that's what Moten
Yeah.
argues for.
Okay,
want to see
sure.
evidence.
That's great. The case evidence, the BD evidence says that people are less prone to racial hate crimes because they're scared they'll get recorded. How does that prove that people are becoming less anti-black?
Well, it does a holistic analysis and indicts your claim of the race war by explaining that it is getting better because of different movements.
Okay, there are accountability.
Wait, what are these
the reason those accountability
Right, you
mechanisms
said it's
were
getting
put in
better because
place.
of movements. Which movements?
Yeah, so the argument is that it's not just a question of brown and black debaters engaging the race war, but rather a holistic approach of all minorities.
It's like governmental protocols,
racism,
mandating recording. Maybe you
Okay.
can say the police aren't getting less
So
racist
were
because
those
of the
movements focused on countering whiteness? Why is that not a double turn of the psychoanalysis K?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
They didn't identify.
So the
whiteness
movements that
as the
Kavnir
locus.
was just talking about did not think that
They did not
whiteness is bad.
They did not identify whiteness as the locus point for all.
Where did the
wrongs
1EC say that
and
whiteness is the
White-
only problem?
White. When I asked you about white being in the debate space, all your response was things like reading framework, things like fiat.
Yes, we said that there are different, distinct protocols.
Yeah, no, okay, those are things that you've identified as causing the race.
Yes.
8 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
7:38.
Okay. 2AC sent. undercommons K, the ballot pick, the core clog disad, psycho, T. Okay, we're good.
Intellectual property is structured by the inauguration of a liberal humanist subject to the form of whiteness that can only ever oppositionally define against racialized bodies. Our empirics are on our side. The status quo is normalized, telling the Proud Boys to stand by, media silence over the systematic burning black churches, extrajudicial killing of the protesters in the urban battlescape. All this occurs while white supremacist terrorists are welcome to open arms to the Capitol. Rodriguez says that the pendulum for post-civil rights liberalism has swung right, and white particles are taking control. Calls for resolution of coherence cannot be disassociated from ongoing system logistics and find the terms for alternative political imaginaries forcing an individuation. Instead, vote affirmative for a policy of militant preservation that traces the logistical code of fiscal of intellectual property and revitalizes sociality as a blockage that stops the process of individuation to endure ongoing logistics is a mode of mutual indebtedness against the white institutional bonds similar to the hold or the South Asian party states or even the ballot logistics strikes. The role of the judge is to abolish the white debate community. The ballot cannot end the race war, but should not reward unethical protocols of internal debate. There's a paradigmatic imperative for militancy. There's too much at stake to deny the urgency of the race war to threaten physical and psychic bonds for black and brown. People see it as militants, which will apply later in the psychoanalysis case. Presumption. First, no sequencing. Their Iranian topicality generates uniqueness for impacts. Rejection of that. Imposition to the advantage of voting out. Second is turn. Their logic relies on Western notions. What is good enough, which would be impact turn. Third is solvency. Ballots are a social currency that shape the community. The combo of the one is performance of the ballot hijacks competitive incentives, forcing students and coaches to respond to antagonism through research. The BD card, it's terrible. The card is after uniqueness. As racial tensions high now, also claims that really police brutality is not an issue of race, with depoliticizing masses causing complacency. It's a reason to reject the team that's beating Raphael 16. U.S. is really for racial tensions more than nothing to defend the power that white Americans despise the Black Lives Matter movement. That black militants say racial violence was unavoidable when we start viewing police brutality as human instead of black around. You have to pick a side. The Stower card again also concedes ontology. That's 1 and T Stower at 12. Last weekend, 2 white men went on a shooting rampage that the cops were building a very weapon like pepper spray, rubber bullets, and sonic grenades. Protesters and possessed hunting assault protesters targeted police fonts, protesters and marched and then police deployed not only the weaponry day fire hoses, batons, and dogs. Undercomes K. First, weigh the chaos ability to provide an analytic to understand the ongoing violence of modernity. Using the analytic, the race war does not presume sides. Honesty is not a question of picking a side, but rather a form of being indebted to one another in the face of anti-black and brown breakfast debate. Second, using the race war as an analytic is good. It's a non-unique. White people will always co-opt. That was the 3 highlights I did above, and use this phrase like race war to justify violence. That's uniqueness for the act, because our usage of the race war is a retooling that reclaims agency within black and brown students, allows them to resist material violence. Third is union or logistics frames uniqueness, which makes ongoing color checking inevitable, harnesses racial identities and pits them against each other, which means that intimate bonds will recreate itself in their unconditional communities. There's only risk, but the absent methodology provides mechanisms to trace and break down logistics of the race war. Fourth is we solve the terminal impact. Militant preservation overcomes movement detachments, identities, be reconstituted identity. That's token 14. For email calling necessarily involves also for lots of the fact of self-loading and self-objection, relational ones is been more this open pure super ego transforming into description causing something productive in militant preservation. The loss of melancholy is not mythology, but mechanisms to reconstruct identity, take over their various values who must wage in their names. Fourth is laboring to sad, blaming black and brown students for how their rhetoric is co-opted by white people is what's used to justify their silence in the midst of violence. White people bulking up, becoming a reason for why the performativity should be overcorrected. 5 is the perm do both. The one is he doesn't color check but opens his arms in the face of indebtedness. However, once we are within what we call the undercommons, we should use that social energy to develop strategies and logistics. The net benefit is urgency. Saying the race war makes it an a priori issue, which is good. Otherwise, it's pacification. 6 is Gitsembe, proves the perm. That's Gitsembe 14. I'm not denying the importance of racism. It's important to have a conversation. We also have the conversation perpendicular critique racism intersecting towards different vector. This notion of discovering blacks and white, embracing the new different. The undercommon. 7 is perm do each. They do them. We do us. 8 is unconditional openness is bad for us. Black and brown individuals experience violence from people that have led into the movement. Ballot pick. First, uniqueness. Academic archives is bad as an advantage to voting after modification, never in the status quo, but the link turn is the power to shift current system from within. That's Valverde 19. Systematic that believe academia can be our victors of meaning beyond academia. Systematic corrupt system will lead to more just society. Contribute to the academy should be happening where academia one is scientists and organized with the power to shift the academies, academia's institutionalized culture, critiquing models are questioning ways of research modeling our communities to make action. Second is the privateer turn. Philip says predictability is bad. Straight turns offense on T. Demanding predictability renders text comprehensible, opening them to the dominant gaze of the academy. The aft doesn't. It's explicitly an unpredictable form of fugitivity which shields a link. Third is frame subtractions of voter A. So point is it's anti-black. It artificially inflates net benefits The sideline minority thoughts his performance which renders body spongeable. B is there's no extreme impact turns requiring them to disprove the method of fugitivity doesn't lack nuance which proven on T, but teams would auto lose for reading extreme impact turns anyways. Core Clyde is said. First, zero link, the app doesn't engage in protection over IPR. Second, distancing is offense against the DA and topicality, solely focusing on impacts out there means we never challenge bonds into space, proliferating interpersonal bonds. Second. Okay, go to 2. First, debate is not a game, but a side of the race war. Conceded uniqueness on case means procedurals on hold and theorize of the race war. None of the benefits of the model can ever be actualized by students who might be dead tomorrow. Second is the counter-interpretation. Militant strategies, rev debates are good and solved. That's Anastopoulos, Sakina 20. Traditional policy debates on neutral consensus from normalized process rationalized something field as an arbitrary external conclusion field not inherently predictable only in traditional over repetition wide debates but activity ought to look like the new conceptualization of class beyond the restrictive framework became necessary rev debates questions what the removes the social debates on the material action period on debate policy phenomenon thinking critically races the opinions of the original performance of material skills practice academia rev the debates enables the debates to consider social change important debates between non-state strategies second modal and no activity gain only some examples outside policy making creating social change outside state involvement rev debates present the opportunity to make debates analysis nuance, cut the card to nuance. Third is the individuation. Just add the model force. They start with the presumption of bonds out there at the level of institutions, which trades off with analysis of racism at interpersonal level. Institutional analysis trades off, absent the restoration of sociotic and cultural reclamation here now. Racialized bodies do not have the energy to enact change, which turns any clash of skills offense. Fourth, the ethical nihilism. Just add the York, we destroy 3. Ethics belief seconds well on the left that I would press with the place with the miracles so that I press just have change our pursuing a goal on same like for them to the perpetual dissolution of white people transform argumentations was stressing diabetes misguided I believe the reparation Germany psychic arms for long for a false hope about a default in depression nihilism spiritual victims cease to fight back and those defeated in the internal cultural disappointment overwhelming resignation expressions include self-inflicted reactionary suicide. 5 is fiat is bad. 5 is the legal universality. Decide refuse. Drawing interpretation of the letter of the law disqualifies legal personality through the pretense of universal definitions that advances civilizing mission of bracketile living experience, black living experience, and Chicago's the impact of psychological splitting, where POC debaters are forced to subdue affective relations to the topic. 7 is the logistics. That's Quant 17. Political science and policies present the view on governability, consumption, nonsensical, as epistemology, ordering, laws, statistic, inflation, pathology, run suffers entirely dependent on the state for sensibility, intelligence, state-centric, and estimated addicts to a certain notion that they do this extent of the state becoming the very fixed weak fear. Cut the card at fear, fairness. First, no impact. Fairness only becomes an impact whether justified. Maintaining a violent game is important. Second, non-unique policy routines break new and actively support the core topic. Third is not intrinsic good. Some level of procedural for SQ is key to Milton Reservation, 1 in Vermont. 7. Studies opinion after the examiner of effects of procedural fairness and fact after behavior, relations to predicting non-compliance decision, and norm violating behavior, investigating legal procedural fairness, correlated negative view, judicial system influenced by transgressions. The law clash was answered above on the fiat case. Get a second. First, no link. The one he never claimed a single source of racism. The one he crosses clears that whiteism is composed of different distinct protocols and norm sections. Ivory towers and decided to not let this whiteboard tell you that black and brown people shouldn't fight racism. The alternative collapse to the quietism, which is far worse. The race war makes resistance try die since you know the status quo is black and brown people getting killed won't solve itself. There is no mythologization of whiteness. We not directly resist whiteness, so there's no risk. We learn to enjoy its rather we endure it. Care work can exist without there exists in the racism. Fourth, no link. We don't see conclusion of whiteness. 5 is perf conf here. It says movements to fight whiteness work on case, then critiques it on decay. Voted for argument of responsibility. At worst, it's reciprocal. 6 is neuroplasticity, racial biases, malleable argumentation is key. That's Jewel 17. Rhetoric can shape the brain about persuasion by argumentation, influence of primitive thought and belief, discursive stimuli. Cut the card there. Cross blood burns.
Send that card out.
Where was that mark on the last card?
I'll put it in the doc.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a second.
Yeah. We'll wait.
It's okay. Yeah. Or 7.
Or, yeah. Sorry.
Alright, different cross?
Yeah.
Okay. Reason to reject the team, perfcon, frame subtraction, and the thing on case. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, what does it mean to abolish the white community?
Yeah, so we've isolated whiteness as not a set of people, but rather practices that feed into xenophobia and anti-blackness at the level of discourse. Our argument is that abolishing the white debate community looks like the judges prioritizing anti-racist actions at the level of the ballot. Our argument is when the 2NR inevitably stands up and says vote negative.
Okay, so is abolish the white community just vote against racism?
Yeah, it's to actively resist racism at every turn and to prioritize it above all else.
Okay. The Kwan evidence, it's about state addiction. How does our model make debaters addicted to the state? We've both agreed that under our model, debaters are also saying the state is bad.
Yeah, our argument is that using the state as the sole locus for political change.
Where do you think this Kwan evidence talks about that? It's saying it's specifically about political
State-centric
science.
analytics commit addicts to a certain notion of state, even to the extent of the state becoming the very fiction we
We
feed.
think
Our
the
argument is that even if you say the state is bad when you're reading affirmatives, it commits addicts to believe that the state is the only possibility for political change. We think that shuts down.
So when I'm affirmative, if I say the state is bad, that's investment into the idea that the state
Yeah,
is
at
the
two
only
levels.
change.
One, we think both it sort of shuts out different forms of theorizing, which is also the individuation dissent.
Wait. How
insofar
does
as
how does it shut out other?
Yeah,
forms
because
of
we think institutional analysis independently trades off with interpersonal interrogation.
Wait.
Our argument.
But like switch side debates, I mean, like
So?
why does it decay?
No,
in
our
the end,
argument
or
is
do
you
we
still
have to
force
then not
people to
solve
defend the state 50% of the time. Our argument is that if we win, that there is no valuable research to be had by defending the state, then we ought not do it. The Quan card also makes a secondary
I
claim.
wanna move on.
No, that's fine. The Quan card also makes a secondary claim that independent of becoming addicted to the state, our argument is that framework as a practice creates a hierarchy of knowledge in which we place arguments that use institutional analysis above militant
Okay,
strategies.
so those hierarchies like exclude debaters. Is that your argument?
Exclude debaters and arguments.
Okay, you've also read a counter-interpretation. Rev v. Rev debates are not accessible for brown debaters like me. Why do you think that you don't link back to these forms of hierarchy?
Well, there's no warrant for that claim. You haven't made a reason why Rev v. Rev debates are unpredictable. The Anastopoulos and Seguino card is incredibly specific about how everyone can engage in non-state strategies. The Traber card and the 1AC specifically
I want
this.
to talk
It
about
says
that,
a
actually.
small
Yeah.
minority of us.
What does it mean to be just have Rev v. Rev debates? What do those debates look like?
Yeah,
Do
it
you
means
do
like
any
the-
institutional analysis.
Yeah, we do institutional analysis insofar as we critique the state, but we don't use it as the locus for political change. The difference between our model and yours is even if you critique the state, our argument is that you still use it as the locus for change, which makes you dependent on fiat.
Ballot pick, the academic archive's bad is an advantage to us. Can you explain that?
Yeah, if you were correct that the academy is inherently racist, it proves our arguments about debate being a site of the race war.
Okay. 750. Stop right by that. There is one. On the order is top count.
Okay.
Do this answer.
Alright, yeah.
Is that okay?
Oh, we don't.
Good.
It's the firewalls. It's not good. I want this trend. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Debate is not a side of a race war, but a game that is set to competitive equity. One reaches a good for the city. Fundamental moral axiom, reasonable deduction guides our moral calculus, directing action based on collective assent, hold it to the same standard. As the absent impact suffering is bad because it means people suffer, so unfairness is also bad self-evidently. Two, paradoxical. Highlighting is absurd when the absent agree to its value between line by line and going for dropped arguments, even if we lose everything else but because fairness is prerequisite to evaluating their arguments. Presume against truth, absent rigorous testing. Three, value to life, dropped. We pour hours into debate when we're already busy. It's leading net breath goes all out the window, turning debate into a grueling, hopeless nightmare, which turns militantism because debaters will burn out. That's Golachowski. Don't put procedurals on hold. This round is in life or death. The debate is an optional extracurricular, and that thought certainly won't create endurance for Berkeley prep. Concede the truth is, quote, no one create and can actualize a model. It means you can only read impacts about this round, which fairness is and their impact is not. Now, the counter-term is military preservation, or military reading of the res deletes debatability. One, refutation, absence for truisms like equity good or violence bad, which are uncontestable and uncontroversial, undermining the whole point of the res. And that also turns our impacts because running to the moral high ground forces teams to defend violent generics like racism good. Two, it's arbitrary. It's waving chaotic plain text in favor of nebulous advocacies, decks, ground. Even outside C and close to the topic are no easier to engage because one of these will not forward a consistent vision of their arguments, driven by their no-linking clog by saying we didn't do IPR, and their no-linking the psycho saying we didn't prescribe whiteness as the locus for all no racism. Three is predictability. Art is telling us a vision of the topic which all debaters can actively prepare for. It's key to generics like cons bad, clog, taxes, etc. That preserves limits, not limiting the agent, and process for when he sees meets the neck. Needs to refer millions of apps, which are structurally impossible. There's 8 billion people, 50 states, 195 countries that can all endorse different revolutionary strategies. Name different red evidence that defines what that is. That means skirting resolution debate means we're not prepared to debate this app in this round. It's also the key internally to narrow and targeted research, which enables two well-prepared teams to debate each other. They say the red debates are good. One, they're unpredictable. Even if ground is sitting on articles on the internet, it's unreasonable to expect the negative to count every card in existence. We can't access the ground unless debates are about the res because the ground will be concessionary, which directs fairness. Two is uncontroversial. The resolution facilitates negative reputation. Theirs ensures the run to the margins, where app literature is always favored against any ground we can find. The purpose OP and KVK debates because they're bound by nothing. Three, team makes them good insofar as there is fairness in those debates. It only exists because the out teams feel an obligation to stay close to the resolution of pure T. Otherwise, they'd say we form 2 + 2 = 4 and move on with their day. Then to stop those evidence, if he has an extra T, they've dropped that should denotes that they compels an action to be taken by the USFG. So it is topical. They say the individuation is at one or first framing issue for all the fiat case. They are not about this round. No one is fiated in this debate. Then we have conceded that you should only evaluate impacts approximately, or you
you would consider that you not evaluate a model. That will never happen, but only what happened in this debate. They were unfair, we did not fiat. So that's all that matters. But the individuation status wrong. One turn debate should not personalize or individuate argument. Bringing up intimate discussions and personal sensitive matters into competitive setting is not consensual and harmful to debaters, and puts judges in a traumatic position where ballots or referendums on identity and experience instead of extrinsic argument turns their 2EC offense and externally crushes debaters' well-being because they externally pathologize the black debaters who want to read plans or go for tea. Two is other forms solved. There are plenty of settings to discuss interpersonal violence, community dialogue, discussions, sessions, enclaves of friends. Those discussions about the race war are preferable when because the ballot is not on the line. Three, no link. Topicality preserves the choice to include personal topics. If one wants to, they can tie their plans to individual experiences or embody their advantages. That's better because it facilitates those discussions only when desired or not forced onto the debaters. It's also paternalistic to say that no one has the energy to say they can't speak for all minority debaters ever, and some again want to go for plans to reteam. They say they have nihilism, decide cross line that it's about a model above. There are 1C interface distinct. The neg need not rejoin on top of affirmatives. So the neg, the app doesn't have to change any of their practices. We just shouldn't we shouldn't lose because they did. It's also regardless, fiat is not ethical nihilism. One turn, fiat is pessimistic. The entire point of inherency is that the plan won't happen now. Your treatise is about individuals who quote place false hope in the state, and no one when we're actively critiquing its inaction. It's more nihilistic to completely give up because it abandons any improvement toward the world, which turns depression. Reading a plan does not require to think that the state is good. Only the technical harm reduction is good. Swigger 14. Do we imagine a restructuring of power relations, law, nothing, and movement into the horizon? If we're intended, we have a strategy to overcoming obstacles and blockage today. We become disinterested in efforts to improve conditions. After all, why would abandon on gaping wound if we imagine that change to the horizon rather than order of subsequent revision might be abused so long as the grounds of political struggle now? Today, organization may win victories, dismissing such efforts is not make one revolutionary spirits and fatalism and abstract politics that abstracts from privilege any improvement to the situation of people to dismiss prolonging the system. Nothing can measure up huge OB standards. This is not to suggest that we give up big picture structural changes. The problem it's not radicalness, but the problem is all or nothing thinking about political change in the meantime to strike societal class, and what will society reconstruct itself in a way that differs from the present structural revolutionary movement will not ascend. Two is Yuling 2. Fiat just means imagining something different from the status quo. They do so by imagining military preservation in response to the resolution. As per 1C cross 6, they also imagine certain movements increasing their size and scope, which the links to this offense. 3 is that it's good because it's fair, should, it's the only predictable reading for action, posing that the federal government ought to act, which outweighs because it's the only thing that the battle can resolve. Battle fatigue does not cause heart attacks. I'll preempt the 1 AR. It's done by literally every T debate ever. It's cross life. And they say legal definitions, the legal uniformity. Just add one, no link. T is a negotiation, not a colonial imposition. Defining words does not assume everyone interprets the rest in the most legalistic manner, but that research rather than personal belief guides prep. To win this, Burke prep does not only prove that legal definitions are bad, but that evidence interps are bad. 2, essentialists. This argument boils down to saying black people cannot understand complicated language, which is more racist. They homogenize them into a single group that can't understand legal language. Obviously, they can read and understand the resolution improvement by their inclusion of cards about IPR in the 1C plus, and they're centering their lived experience for apps causes identity negation, which is more violent. 3, they link more. The 1C includes references to IPR, proving they still rely on defining the rest in the same way. They just chose to negate it. 4, universal definitions are good. They're key to common ground. The rest is what all debaters can coalesce around for prep. It's probably imperfect, but every definition is nearly legal on a legal topic. Their lack of counter definitions means you should be highly skeptical of assertions about multiple reasons of the rest. Disregarding any ascribed meaning causes more microaggressions because offensive terms will be categorized as personally not offensive for the oppressor. At worst, reject the definitions, not the interpretation. It's equally as arbitrary for our unevidence reading the rest. If you kick the legal definitions, which proves that centered predictability around personal intuition makes debates irresolvable. Punishment with the crime. Punitive paradigms are infinitely aggressive, but rejecting the definitions that a strong enough signal and creates a favorable time trade-off. No logistics is sad. No, there's a cross-line from above. This state does not. The quant evidence about centering the state for locus for action, but we critique the state and they don't assume that you can be negative too. So True Side definitely solves anything about centering the state of the locus for action. It fails because we're not inordinately raising the research firm based off state-based apps over movements, counterplans. Those debates occur on equal footing and are better for revolutionary testing. If movements are so much better than debaters, we'll learn that over a season worth of debates and argument refinement. There's also no hierarchy of knowledge as for cross-6 reading. T does not exclude debaters or arguments as negotiation, which I did above. Regardless, this ballot spills over is 0. If we win this, only evaluate this round. 1, empirically, nothing links the kind of debate you choose, the kind of person you become. Debaters have gone for the cap game, work for hedge funds, and arguing against climate policies and become climate activists. School, friends, in the next 50 years of our lives outweigh fears of debate. 2, recoil. Debaters internalize losses and technical failures and don't research graph more. The process of arguing causes the polarization and epistemic ignorance, so debaters will double down if they lose. That's no bias. Dropped. If anything, research reform will be in response to your apps or if worldview changes. It's in the opposite direction. 3, attachment fails. We switch sides and negate our own positions. Seems go for incorrect arguments like warm and good. knowing and scientifically bunked. 4. Other debates stumped. Thousands of rounds occur simultaneously, each K team preaching a different vision of the topic. Every empiric about community practice about the college, not high school level, so it's not analog. Also, evaluate solvency consequentially. About anything else defaults into saying it falls into tautology or is itself consequentialist, attempting to set a signal cause cruel optimism, white guilt dissolution, which ensures their offense. Now, the choice sees fairness one-liners. It's not interrelated to the game. Premise is good self-evidently. That was the overview. It is unique. We have generics like speech generous against policy teams. If they're so bad, we'll go for T against them too. Our impacts procedural, not structural fairness. Structural disparities are irresolvable by either team, but about can correct procedural violation. Technical. They say their impact is, they say this cue is good. It's not. That's what makes us distrust legal systems. Obviously inevitable. If they can read and lose, regardless, they still abide by other norms like speech time. So they literally have not broken the law.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. You seem to make the assertion that the 2AC said it's only about this one round. Where did I say this?
The under debate is game race were right under where you said like put procedurals on hold. You said model will never be actualized, which is our argument.
That's just not true.
Like I'm 100% sure it's on my flow.
Okay, sure. We said a model. Why would it? Okay, that's fine.
I mean, regardless, we've made arguments why you can't.
That's fine. More broadly, why is debate good?
Debate good?
Yeah, why is debate good?
I mean, we think it's a space for argument refinement, probably.
Okay, why is refinement good?
Because if you're right that militant strategies need to be approached in response to the racist world, then we think that that is the best avenue through which.
Okay, does it matter what we iterate over? Like, is Clash content neutral?
Yeah, probably. The reason is.
Okay, so if we put any stasis at all, that refines our strategies.
Not what I said. No, we require some like a predictable stasis for all debaters to access before the topic. The reason that is because.
Okay, if we prove our
requires
content, what I'm asking is more so like if we prove our content is predictable, no matter what we clash over, it creates iteration.
If it was predictable and limited and had controversial ground for both sides, yes.
Okay, can you give an example of like, you say if we're correct that the race war happens now, your model resolves it. How?
Well, it's not that like no one obviously can resolve the race war, but you've made arguments about movements in response to the race war. If think about like any activist needing to like answer second and third level questions about the goals of their movement.
Okay, how do
do
FVK debates resolve that, or like AFV process, or like around where the AF goes for theory?
AFV, like obviously our models don't necessitate AFV process or necessitate theory debates, but if it is AFVK or AFV the movement's counterclaim, the AF can make forward defenses about why using the state as a method of tactical harm reduction is good, and also why the state is a necessary locus for action and change in the system of status quo.
Does your model teach debaters to go engage the state?
We don't think any model of debate necessarily teaches debaters anything. Like we think we switch sides, we negate arguments we've already read. We do not think debate has any effect on our subjectivity. But we do think, if anything, if you're correct about subjectivity, then argument refinement would filter all your arguments about activist skills, etc.
Okay, let's go to the definitions to SAD. You say it's most universally predictable. How can you make this claim?
We didn't necessarily say that. The resolution is accessible by both teams before the topic.
I understand the words are accessible. How do you determine how people interpret the resolution to be universal?
Number one, we think that we're only defining our negative verb, right? The most important thing to take away from the legal definitions answers is that the neg need not rejoin non-topical affirmatives. Okay. So you need not interpret the words in the resolution any given way. We just think that we have interpreted it based off definitions, and therefore we need only be burdened with rejoinder against apps that align with that predictable reading.
Okay.
Send me that. Everyone can be forward. You'll leave the court clock, DM? Under comments? This side, okay. Case? And the ballot. Is everyone good? For prep?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, you said there's cards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Give me a second. Y'all good?
Yeah.
Alright.
Cloak, you get Bruce or violation on T undercommons. Concede the Perms as a competition. If they don't get offense here for logistics, that's a for uniqueness. That's not in the it's not in the debate-based teams have read resport in the past. Your ballot doesn't do anything. That was 2 and C cancel. The militant preservation impact as an add-on. They are in a militant preservation of the lost object, which their Perm Connor says. The links have proved that. The laboring DA doesn't apply to T. T doesn't justify. Telling black and brown debaters to be quiet just as a floor is free to play and psycho. The Ivory Tower DA don't cross-apply. SSD and TBI make Ivory Tower DA non-cross-applicable, and it'll be answered by the closest persuasion DA below. No perf con 1, no violation. The case cards about previous instances that didn't center whiteness as the object, which is our length. 2 negation theory is key. We can't predict the app, so we can't be held to argument for responsibility that we didn't know about. Also, burden rejoinder requires us to only disprove the app, which is the only burden that should be placed on the end jewel card. 1 is descriptive of a field of study, but doesn't describe a method of persuasion that solves for neuroplasticity. 2, this round is resolved. It's about the mapping of neurons over time. Your voting app doesn't change the mapping of your neurons. Just hearing their arguments is enough to map your neurons, though, even if it is. So you can vote neg and agree with the affirmative to change neuroplasticity, and the card is citing ancient Greeks, which are not reliable to determine the psyche, and previous instances of people reading the race war. This should have remapped those neurons for you, Yaya, because you just have in the past. Case. Role of the judge is to determine who's the better debating. The role of the ballot is to just reject racism, but 2 DAs. 1, it makes white judges to wash their hands of racism and walk away from the debate facing the race war. It's over. 2, it solves. That was in the 2 and C, and judges and high school judges should not be determined to determine whether or not there was racism occurred in the round, because otherwise it makes the judges determine the identities of debaters. They say ballot shape community through antagonism. They don't. Antagonism is wrong. Debaters will just double down, proven by the fact that they ask judges after the round how to beat the K better. BD is not a reason to reject the team. It says that police brutality isn't a product of racial welfare, but it's a product of slavery, which is probably true. And reject the argument, not the team. The Stower says violence happened, but doesn't mean that ontology is true. It doesn't make a prescriptive claim about the system entirely. Is there anything else?
Yeah, answer the predictability bad.
Yeah. Just because something is good doesn't mean you have to get involved. The value of the one I see is self-evident. It doesn't need external validation by debate judges to become actualized. Declines to connect their performance to a need for ballot by voting negative. Multiple links, one surveillance. A judgment renders there an argument, an object of analysis within the gaze of the academy, not an expression of protest. Scholarly dissection makes it legible and comprehensible. Right for surveillance by dominant power relations that views renewable potential. The win also has this effect. Prominence and advancing in the tournament brings scrutiny and analysis. The transformative effect is backwards. Exposure doesn't produce change. The dominant culture co-ops, and that's Phillips. 2, representation. Their speech had value in and of itself, not because it was viewed by you, and it is fleeting, and it's only the moment. It attempts to ladder connected to it. The ballot gives too much power to the audience because the speaker is structurally blocked in controlling the representation of the representation. This is a means of turning over one's identity to the same reproductive economy that underwrites liberalism, which turns the case. Well, the text perform only left in the present performance can be documented to participate in circulation or representation. Once it does become something other to degree performance attempts to enter the economy reproduction and betrays its own ontology exchange between art and the viewer. The masterpiece of the House arrest controlling all commentary about performance calls machinery of reproduction representation circulation of capital D, process by which we put others' words in others' realize on institutionally coming, which equivalencies are re-established performance uses of this element. A number of people have experienced about which leave no trace after running out of cancel the choice statistic non-uniting into independence for reduction is stress. The Valorant card just says that changing the academy is good, but if we win our thesis claim about in this round and about judges viewing and evaluating the affirmative, then that takes out this argument because it proves that putting the affirmative under the lens of the academy is more worse than good. The responding to the argument with a ballot is a form of recognition that's incompatible with radicality. Vote negative to refuse white comprehension. For 16 database privileges to pretend world with black people can have false radicality and recognize and be mistakes and dependency of white recognition that's judged by comprehending and assimilating with their own liberal existence through appeal to white people are in need of recognition. Their valid deference and message of critiques were fundamentally depending on the white mind and real radicality is not to come from an appeal to white recognition with the rejection of it does not need not depend on allegiances with white liberals to reject white education to radicality of debate, forced negation of white comprehension and not assimilation and the private That's your turn. The Phillips card doesn't say predictability is bad. It says that making racial survival strategies predictable in the academy is bad because that opens up to violence within the university. It's not about T. It's about racial strategies, which means it links back to them more than it does to us.
They're more predictable for themselves.
They're more predictable.
They don't have to prep your.
Yeah, what Russell said. The picks back. Okay. They're more predictable for themselves because
they only have to prep 2 arguments.
They only have to prep 2 arguments. And picks bad is wrong. 1, we're not frame subtraction, which means that we do not link to any of this. 2, practice critique of frames is necessary. Every left movement is differentially effective. Making the choice to not consider details of strategy denies knowledge about strategy effectiveness and artificially insulates them from criticism, which turns the case.
T.
Go to T. Logistics DEI, topical affirmative could bring add to the comments that opens up new spaces to build communities of care. Topical affirmative could fiat spending trillions to deploy the entire US military to strengthen paths of bureaucratic hats that drop picks to the USG, collapses the government, city control to the undercommons.
738. Stop draft 5.
You on that 552?
554. Sure.
Other cards.
What do you, Russell? What do you got some carding add-ons? Sorry. No problem.
How much you have left?
554. Case ballot pick T. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
What's it?
Vote affirmative for military preservation to turn inward to an indebted, incomplete, feel a halt violent individuation that saps social energy needed for black and brown students who endure ongoing racial violence. Yes, Race War 1AC Davis 2024 says violence is at an all-time high. Recharged by economic distress and COVID, and looming election only emboldens Trumpers to lash out, proved by hate crimes directed at Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, following Trump's comments and debate. Guilt persuasion is clearly not unique because no one thinks about solves all racism, and voting out is worse because voting negative is worse because it forecloses all cross-racial allyship is bad faith. Guilt persuasion, which reinforces binaries. 2NC certainly not say tap solves, and the rest will be on T. Ballot pick. Ballot is code. The debate is about models, so affirming sets a norm. One is logic, reduction about sovereignty, and only its round is incoherent because they say this round would have been fair under a better model, so competing in terms is inevitable. Second is ethical localism, only considering the effects of individual rounds on ourselves, ignoring the broader community's needs, exactly the individuation. This saves the race war by rupturing collective militancy. Three is competitive incentives. If debaters are driven by wins, like the 2C says, they'll adapt to militant method debates over time, proved by how this half has maintained popularity over the years because it wins. Line by line, all of our defense to judge adjudicating feelings on T will apply. T. 3 frames. 1 is uniqueness. The race war should frame impact calculus in the face of a world structure around racial colonial subjugation. You should put all procedures on hold and prioritize their impacts to disrupt the ascendancy of white beings. Second is racial advocacy. Your fetus says it causes black sector harm and nukes health, which precedes upholding for procedure because the victims of racism cannot access it. 3 is role of the judge is the abolition of the white debate community. Elevate racism for procedural because no procedure is more important than its accessibility. Extend the counter-interpretation, militant reuse of the resolution, straight turns or offense. Because 2C Anastopoulos says the revenue of debates reduce revolutionary knowledge necessary to endure about the race war, which outweighs policy advocacy skills, especially in race war now means the constituents their politics are dead long before they can influence policy. No defense. Truisms lose presumption. They had ground and it was not concessionary. Impact turning. One element of the app is sufficient, so they only need to prep the theory debate or state good IPR good to generate valuable dialogue. It's inevitable because small soft-left policy apps also avoid generics, which are magnified by this topic. Codifying the status quo is topical, leaving no role for the deck. Their 1 and T also offered multiple Ks, which the cross-ex was very good at defending, which proves constraining engagement T was a choice. Now predictability is ideological, which is since everyone's lived experience is different and shapes how they interpret resolutional wording. There's a legacy of race war debates proved by teams like Nobro MR, Capel DR, and North UPC, etc. All engaged, vibrant clash over deep criticisms from Joy James, Moten, etc., which proves there's a blueprint for clash that they intentionally sidestep, alleging unpredictability's bad faith when the apps on the wiki we disclosed in 30 minutes in advance, and they've debated this half before in this season. Infinite actors is also limited by militant readings of the resolution, which ensures social insurgency is the starting point, which eliminates governments, elites, etc. Now definitional basis is irrelevant because words carry implicit meaning without strict textual definitions, so stretch and limit solved by reasonability, mandating contextual basis, ignores the black and brown oral tradition that contributes to their ideas of predictability, which cannot be encapsulated by definitions. KVK possible now because of resolutional ties proves our argument. The 2R cannot take it back. Counterterp still requires apps to critique the topic as defined by all of their definitions, but in response, instead, offer militant strategies specifically tailored to countering resolutional violence. 2C shiftiness and perms is solved by pulling quotes from 1C evidence, which is empirically disproven by Nobro, Capel, etc. And most judges have a low bar for links to counter potential shiftiness. 2 net benefits. 1 is individuation. Their model forces us to start with the presumption of violence out there at the level of institutions, which distances us from violence in here, enabling interpersonal violence, and guilt persuasion that ignores personal complicity and anti-blackness. And second is logistics. Their model state addiction produces a hierarchy of advocacy and knowledge predicated on racialized notion of productivity and value. The framing is use of T shows the only starting point for advocacy. Defers agency power back to legal entities, which pathologizes other forms of black actually legal resistance. There is demand for reciprocity, which is quan. Other forms solve preserves a white echo chamber for the development of racialized actors to fight for the wrong side of the race war. This is reciprocal since board games offer fairness, and Model UN offers legal training, but debate is the only space where youths can test militant strategies. No paternalism, because we are speaking for personal experience, not making claims about how other people interpret the topic. Color checking is non-unique, which they drop it off the K. Read it and lose is pointless because communal discussions with nothing on the line gives the elites no incentives to compare future strategies and stigmatizes such discussions as mere distraction from business as usual. We don't believe our arguments, and inherency solves is not responsive when the DA is not just cruel optimism but an impact turn to eliminate the opportunity for extra legal strategic refinement. Even if minorities are taught to distrust the state, they never teach them how to care in the face of interpersonal terror, how to organize for themselves, which means the 2AR has to be flawless in explaining how well it skips over the hardest steps of policy implementation, trains liberation, or they lose. We do not link because okay is specific to the state instead of the approximate accessible strategies. 1AC Traver is an external passivity DA. This is bypassing feasibility in favor of questions of desirability makes change appear easy, which is shattered when we attempt real world change after debate, causing us to surrender agency to the state. Heart attacks thumped assumes our argument to be reading T once causes heart attacks rather than experiencing racism contributes to stress over time. T is suicide irrelevant. All of our T is to fiat, and this debate is about this debate. So what and model stuff was done above. Argument refinement is not solved because we are forced to adhere to the state when we are asked. Subject information is relevant because they contextualize their answers to changing white people's minds, which is not our concern. Our argument is that black students should have the space as testing ground for the counter-interpretation. Double down is their only offense, but it's either unverifiable or a racist self-report that we should not be accountable for, since those individuals will be racist either way and they never deserve fairness. Now, the fairness stuff. The intrinsic good, concede racism is unfair. Your PDS says physical symptoms ruin cognitive ability, which is far more unfair than not being able to read down their Dropbox. Second is trivialization DA, claiming inaccessibility is bad for the same reasons as claiming inaccessibility is bad for the same reasons procedural fairness in a privileged academic game is trivializing and belittling to the oppressed. You should reject the team. No fairness paradox. 1, compartmentalize. We can value some aspects of fairness, i.e. evaluation, without valuing others like outcome. Second, double bind. Either we both agree racism is intrinsic evil or reject the team because they do not. No truth testing. Lack of prep doesn't mean the opposite false positive. Internal like defense applies and other sources provide value to life. The fact that it controls our value to life proves we are at some level educationally invested, which proves subject formation.
5.
Five.
Yeah, 5.
Drop cases, we can remove the vacancy, and that public safety services, reason offenses, the recruiter trying to happen in the door, customer support, and some of the stuff, signing out a report to the earnings, and everything, and being like, not being patient, and then whatever, you know, then that's kind of what I'm saying, no, and sign, because it's worth it, not wait, it's worth it, well, they get more about, because we don't, they're all important, we think about it, and then we'll probably, like, I'll tell you, like, treatment, that the treatment that the stuff they have, so, they, they're gonna be holding, and then they go to the playground, they fire the that now, all proper.
the debate. They cannot access any movement building, revolutionary practice, or militant strategies against the resolution. When we're reading studies that say procedural fairness causes defeated moral agency and psychic burnout, and actually makes debaters exhausted by hours and hours of work only to lose unfairly. That straight turns every offense about activist goes to militant preservation because debaters will not become activists if they all constantly lose unfairly and they lose faith in their ability to win things via argumentation. That they also drop argumentation causes echo chambers and causes more defeated moral agency. So introducing race war into debate does not cause any sort of revolutionary testing. Now they say overseas was on hold. This is not drop this round is not life or death debate. Is an optional extracurricular activity. So don't put procedures on hold. They've essentially conceded that fairs and impact is axiomatically good. There's a reason that purpose to flow diligently to shoot jog groups is true and not inject your political proclivities in the hierarchy, and that reason is fairness, which most of us rely on it. And it's fundamental to all morality. Now they say racial battle fatigue burnout obviously turns it. No heart attacks because they only believe change is good in their model. Because we inherency means like things like we don't believe that the state will do the plan now. Now they say roll the judge who false white debate community pathologizing and self-serving, calling black debaters white for reading plans is more racist and no reason to reject the team here. But also the role of is to vote for the team to do that of debating because about cannot do anything else. Now their counter dropped a huge limit society. There are 8 billion people, 50 states, and 200 countries each that can afford their own revolutionary strategy. These are not checked by KVK because not living the HM process from what he sees because it means things can defend like Afghanistan and Russia militancy, which are not which no link on US based US-based offense. They also drop the team makes KVK debates good. So if they think they can actualize a model, then all these debates, then their debates do not involve topicality, which means that all those that teams feel a necessity to stay closer to the resolution in fear of T, which is otherwise they just affirm T what's moving forward. They said that loses truisms and presumption. Any risk obviously beats presumption framing. Now they also drop the most cases all loops to the permanent. Even if, and the ones that they don't, there's an asymmetric research burden on that favors the app. So that is just pulling quotes because it's unpredictable. So we wouldn't be able to research that before the round or predict the quotes because teams like MBA will just break unpredictable apps every single round. So there's no time to pull quotes. Now they say the legal definitions are bad. Our argument is about the negs argument and affirm. So there's definitely no link. There's we do not force the app to do anything from round to round. Even in this debate, we only think that the neg need not be rejoined, need not be burdened with rejoinder against affirmatives that are beyond the scope of predictable research. That means we don't force them to interpret the resident in a certain way. Also, it's a misreading of predictability. Predictability is not about every debater's personal intuition, but what research guides people before a tournament. They've dropped the data link too because they include references to IPR, so they clearly interpreted the resolution in a similar way that we did. So there's not, and they haven't presented alternative readings to the resolution. So if they did, they should give them regardless. This one seems not even about their lived experience, about the race war, which is external to debate. Even if it is about them, they haven't cited any personal experiences. So it's not based off their lived experience. Now they say elections are unpredictable. It's bad faith. That's wrong. It is. You can still reject the definition. You can still reject the definitions and defer to our unevidenced interpretation. If we shouldn't universalize definitions, it's more universalizing for them to impose their reading of the resolution onto us by forcing us to negate it. So it turns their offense. Now they say it causes. They say the counter-interpretation requires athletics. That's not true. There are infinite revolutionary strategies. I could approach the USFG with like a random bill that could be considered revolutionary. If it's only to the person that defines it. They haven't read any evidence that defines this. So that starts with limits offense. They say that the benefit is individuation. Debaters should not individuate or personalize argument. This is offense that they have dropped. It causes violent identification because debaters will forward embodied advantages and things that all turns their offense because neg teams don't have any offense to say against. We can't negate people's personal experience. So we should talk about the state-based violence because they've also dropped that the Smucker evidence that says tactical harm reduction via the state can enable more contingent harm reductions and that enables better strategies for movements. The problem in the left now is that we're too focused on structural large changes in utopia and not tactical individual harm reductions, which deletes activists. And now they say the logistics aside, the T-games which I'd solve this. Michael's only answer in the 1 AR is it's about a model, which if they're going for a model, then obviously we have offense about this. They drop the IB comments and the dropkick TVA. The dropkick TVA I'm going for because it means that you can defend apps that did not defend the USFG as a locus for action on the affirmative, that access their literature about the honor comments and allows them to fill in after. Also, they drop that the fiat is pessimistic because the more that we believe that inherency is true, then we believe that the state is failing now. So it links to offense to other forms is not a reason to reject the team because obviously it's true. They say they say inherency is extra legal. It's not, or it doesn't preclude extra legal requirement. Obviously, the movement's counterplan versus the on the neg assaults against all those debates happening with trade evidence. It's not. It doesn't bypass feasibility because we have to agree through this specificity. It's different. We have to go through the specificity of different policies. Now, they say subject formation on debate. They double down. They only say this is racist self-report. Debaters will double down if they lose for reading studies. So it is verifiable. It's not serious self-report because that's just a rhetorical trick that doesn't get them out of anything. Yeah.
552. I got it. No, yeah, I got it.
True affirmative, conceding the entire pathology dissent and dropping race war now makes the debate structurally unwinnable. I'll do procedurals on hold first. You should put procedurals on hold during the race war. Winning case and uniqueness filters all of their offense. Even if fairness is good, you ought not prioritize arbitrary game consignments in the face of real racialized violence, especially when they have not made a claim to the external value of debate. You should overcorrect for the ability for militant subjects to theorize strategies of resistance over minute procedural skew, because long-term iteration cannot be accessed by students who might be dead tomorrow, which answers this debate is not life or death. When they've dropped, there is an ongoing race war, which means you should elevate all arguments to life or death. I'll extend the pathology dissent here to net benefit to a model that they've dropped. Their universalized interpretation views legality as the only medium through which advocacy can occur, which is the colonization of alternative modes of imagination that defers all agency and power back to the state, which reproduces a pathology that through its demand of reciprocity from black presidents, rendering all racial scholarship irrelevant unless placed within the hubris of imagination of white liberal governance, which is impacted out by Quan and Uroquitas. It says that it causes physiological harm, heart attacks, panic, headaches, which is uncontested by the 2 RR impacts. Turn theirs faster than the inverse can be true. Debaters do not show up to access any benefit to the fair model if psychic harm is done onto them, which means they don't have the energy to wake up the next day, which means we out-sequence even their burnout offense. The inherency lantern is relevant. We're impact turning epistemological ordering, not state being good or bad, but either way, they're still behind on fiat bad. Even if they train debaters to believe the state is bad now, they should teach debaters that, quote, tactical harm reduction is good, and that they should engage the state, which doesn't lift them up but gets gunned down, proven by the concession case that every time black or brown people try to engage the state, they get materially psychically aggressed, which was all the 1NC re-highlights and the 1NC Davis evidence. The pathology dissent that was above. They say it's only about this round. I'll extend in-round framing here. Drop 3 subpoints. First, ethical localism, prioritizing individual competitive equity over the needs of militants in the community creates a form of individuation and fracturing, which teaches debaters to be hyper-focused on their success rather than the need to collect. The second, drop ballot solving, drop ballot deplatforming. If they're correct, that policy debaters are uniquely competitively incentivized and competitively voting them down. Shifts the argument of meta. If they lose 10 times to framework races, then they'll be incentivized to go for a strategy like the undercommons case, which is a drop. Framing issue. Third is logic. The only way to evaluate and determine a procedural violation is to determine if an alternative model would be preferable. So competing in terms is inevitable. They've also dropped an external passivity dissent, which answers harm reduction good, because bypassing up feasibility in favor of desirability makes change appear easy, which is shattered when we attempt real world change. After debate causing us to surrender our agency to the state. Again, conceding the terminal to uniqueness makes fairness completely unwinnable. Even if there's a marginal risk of burnout, they drop racialized anxiety, causes stress, headaches, and reactionary suicide, which even a 1% risk has to outweigh. Burnout was extended as, quote, value to life, but the 2NC did not extend the 1NC evidence. They dropped that debaters can access detail from other sources. White people quitting when they lose unfairly is irrelevant, because what black and brown debaters need is not Russell Howard's approval, but a space to test their methods. Even when they quit or feel procedural violation, black and brown debaters don't quit when they lose KVK debates proven by the past 20 years. Emporia, Wake, Rutgers, Nobro, Capella, the list goes on, which was conceded. They say we rely on fairness too. Non-Senator Russell drops both answers. First, compartmentalize. We can value some aspects of fairness, i.e. evaluation, without evaluating others like outcomes. Second is double bind. They conceded that racism is far more unfair, which means we're straight turning moral coherence. If they're right that racism is only bad insofar as it's fair, meaning 1% risk that they're racist, means they're largely more unfair. They say it's pathologizing to call black debaters. In-group violence is real when black debaters participate in violent norms. They should be called out. Drop race war now means you should overcorrect and prioritize calling out every instance of investment to whiteness, which answers the voter. The counter-interpol extended here maintains stasis while solving our offense, and Estopoulos Sakino is the best card in the debate, says that ASA must defend the resolution, but in the context of Rev militant strategy, which is the last most neutral stasis of compensation, the net benefit, the strategy building. One IC Trader says you ought to prioritize militant strategies, as a minute amount of us will ever be internal to the state, but all of us can engage in non-state movement. This outweighs. Russell concedes in 2NC crossings, iterations, content neutral, as long as content is somewhat predictable, which means a risk of defense outweighs. We saw a net benefit. I'll extend the defense here. First, militancy is predictable. Drop teams like Nobro, Capel, DR, BCC. Use non-state strategies that teams have specific case next to, which answers the limits this ad, because not every person gets an ad. It's about methods which are limited. Second is specifically intimating beats back perms, case form like the ballot picker cap apply to any app that even engages debate, and links are supercharged, but they have not defending anything, means that even if content is unpredictable, it's overcorrected by being more debatable, solved by pulling quotes from what is evidence is empirically disproven by Nobro, Capel, etc. Third is KVKA debate possible now because the resolution ties is our argument. The counter term still requires absolute topics defined by their definitions, but in response to offer militant strategies that specifically tailored to resolutional bonds, not concessionary ground. They have ground, not concessionary, proven by the undercommons K. They say no risk of identity negation, drop can contest a method, not identity, be reasonable. Every policy act has depth impacts, but not every 2R is depth good. Only decide burden rejoinder, we didn't lose is bad. Communal discussions with nothing in line because leads no interest. TVA was light in the 1AR, but also light in the 2R, where impacting the state is essential locus for advocacy, which is love, which kills the TVA. We can still rely on fiat as an epistemological order and paradigm, which means Traber, Quad, and York. Outweigh.